You work, you strive, you build a life, you accumulate knowledge, connections, and moments of genuine joy. But underneath every success, every relationship, there is a clock ticking. The fear is not of pain. The fear is of the void. The fear is that one day the lights simply go out, and everything you are, your consciousness, your memories, your unique energy, is erased. Oblivion. That is the ultimate enemy we face, the one that paralyzes ambition and drains the meaning out of achievement. This crippling anxiety is rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, the illusion of separateness. You see yourself as a singular wave, distinct, powerful, crashing onto the shore. And the fear is that when the wave breaks, it is over. The form dissolves, and the you disappears forever. But the wave is never separate from the ocean. It is a temporary manifestation, a dynamic expression of an infinite body of water.
The wave is not born when it crests, and it does not die when it crashes. It simply returns its energy to the continuous, eternal source from which it arose. The fear of death is the fear of becoming nothing. But the Buddhist perspective, particularly the radical clarity offered by Nichiren Daishonin, does not offer comfort. It offers surgical clarity. It states that you are not becoming nothing. You are returning to the whole. Your energy, your potential, the causality you built, it cannot be destroyed. It is simply merging back into the eternal continuum of the Dharma nature. Your consciousness is not a battery running out. It is a current changing its form. But for centuries, this idea of eternity was philosophical, reserved for meditating monks on mountaintops, or written in complex sutras that required decades of study to decipher. It was abstract. It was inaccessible to the person struggling in the marketplace.
In 13th century Japan, a revolutionary named Nichiren Daishonin shattered that esoteric barrier. He didn't just teach that life is eternal. He provided a guarantee, a technology that allows the common person working a job, raising a family, fighting traffic, to access and confirm that eternal life state right here, right now, in the midst of their suffering. Who was this man? Nichiren was born in 1222 into a Japan consumed by political chaos, natural disasters, and spiritual confusion. It was an age of apocalypse where fear was the dominant currency. Earthquakes leveled cities, famines killed millions, and civil wars decimated the ruling class. People were desperate for answers, but the established temples offered complex rituals and promises of paradise only after death. Their teachings were a spiritual insurance policy for the afterlife, but offered no power for the present life.
Nichiren's mission was simple and terrifyingly direct: to distill the entirety of Buddhist wisdom into a single, actionable practice that affirmed the dignity and eternity of life in this specific moment. He declared that the core teaching of the Buddha, the ultimate truth revealed in the Lotus Sutra, contained the exact mechanism required to transform the mortal person of suffering into a being of enlightened, eternal life. He was not a gentle reformer. He was a force of nature who declared that all previous interpretations were flawed, incomplete, or outright fraudulent because they failed to deliver immediate, tangible proof of enlightenment and eternal life. This declaration
was not merely theological, it was existential. He was telling the common Garson that they already possessed the key to eternal happiness, and that the established authorities were deliberately hiding it behind layers of complexity and ritual.
This radical stance, this insistence on immediate, actionable eternity, made him the most persecuted religious figure in Japanese history. He was exiled repeatedly, nearly executed, and constantly harassed. But his persecution only served to prove his central point, that the greatest truth is always challenged by the illusion of temporary power. Nichiren understood that the greatest fear is not failure or poverty, but the ultimate finality. And he knew that if he could solve the problem of death, not philosophically, but practically, he would liberate humanity from the chains of fear. He offered a promise that by embracing the ultimate law of the universe, you are not merely surviving death, you are affirming your inherent eternal Buddhahood right now. His teaching stripped away the need for intermediaries, for complex ceremonies, and for the hope of future rebirth in a distant land. His message was centered on the here and now, the reality that your life is already an eternal manifestation, and the practice is simply the tool to awaken to that reality. The key to this awakening is the understanding of the fundamental structure of life itself, a concept Nichiren called the principle of Ichinen Sanzen. A single moment of life encompasses 3,000 realms. Ichinen Sanzen means that at this very moment, your life is not isolated. It is a 3,000-fold universe in motion. It means that the highest state of Buddhahood and the deepest pit of hell are not distant locations. They are conditions of being contained within your current experience, fully realized in a single instant of thought. If the universe is contained within a single moment of life, then the energy that drives the universe must also be contained within the individual. This is the bedrock of Nichiren's conviction, and it is why he refused to yield during his persecutions.
He saw his suffering, the exile to Sado Island, the near execution at Tatsunokuchi, not as external punishment, but as the ultimate, necessary test of his internal life force. He did not pray for his enemies to vanish. He chanted for his own life state to rise above the temporary illusion of power and pain. He experienced the death of his temporary self, while affirming the eternity of his true self. This was the practical demonstration of eternal life force in the face of absolute physical threat. He proved that the internal realm of the Buddha is impervious to external destruction. He transcended the fear of death while standing directly in its shadow. The fundamental terror that paralyzes humanity is the belief in discontinuity. We fear that when the physical body fails, the consciousness, the unique I, vanishes into nothingness, a permanent erasure. Nichiren's teaching dismantles this fear by redefining the nature of existence itself. Think of life not as a fragile candle flame that can be extinguished, but as a wave. You, in your current form, are a wave. You have definition, you have individuality, you have movement and momentum. You are unique among all the waves that have ever risen. The ocean, however, is the ultimate reality. The ocean is the eternal law, the boundless energy field of the universe, the source of all life. The wave rises, it crests, it defines itself against the sky. It moves across the surface, believing itself to be separate, believing itself to be a distinct entity fighting the wind and the tide. But the wave is never separate from the water. The wave is the water. When the wave reaches the shore, or when it meets a powerful storm, it does not die. It simply returns its energy, its specific temporary form, back into the vast, limitless body of the ocean. The unique manifestation dissolves, but the energy, the water, the consciousness that drove that manifestation remains eternal.
It is recycled. It is reformed. It is simply waiting for the next universal condition, the next set of causes and effects, to rise again as a new, unique wave. Death is not annihilation. It is a change in manifestation. It is the temporary form returning to the eternal reservoir. The goal of the practice is to realize this truth so profoundly that while you are the wave, you already feel and embody the boundless, undefeated power of the entire ocean. This profound realization removes the fear of the tide, because you understand that you are not merely riding the water, you are the water. Your eternity is guaranteed because you are already one with the eternal law. This realization that you are the ocean is not mere philosophy. It is a tested and validated truth, proven not in a sanctuary, but under the executioner's blade. Nichiren Daishonin was the ultimate challenger of discontinuity.
He lived in 13th century Japan, a time of chaos, famine, and intense religious corruption, where the established powers promised salvation in some distant, ephemeral afterlife, while ignoring the suffering right in front of them. His message was simple, revolutionary, and deeply threatening to the status quo. The eternal law, the boundless ocean of life, is not found outside of you. It is found within your own life, right now. This belief led to relentless persecution, exile, starvation, beatings, and ultimately the attempt on his life, known as the Tatsunokuchi persecution. Imagine that moment. You are bound, being led through the darkness to the execution grounds. The wave is about to crash prematurely. Every fiber of the human animal screams terror and finality. The threat is absolute.
He looked at the executioner not as the agent of his end, but as a temporary phenomenon trying to interrupt an eternal, predetermined cycle. He was not afraid of the sword, because he knew the sword could only cut the water, not destroy the ocean. He understood that he was not just a wave. He was the specific, unique manifestation of the mystic law, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. At the very moment the official was prepared to strike, when the wave was poised to break against the shore of death, a blinding object, often described as a bolt of light, a celestial phenomenon, or a sudden devastating flash, streaked across the sky. The executioner panicked. The sword failed to fall. The attempt was aborted. This was the definitive physical manifestation of the law protecting the wave. It was the universe intervening to declare that this specific manifestation of life, one dedicated entirely to the eternal law, was untouchable by mortal, temporary power.
It was at that moment, facing absolute destruction, that Nichiren transcended the status of a mere mortal wave and fully manifested the boundless, undefeated life state of the eternal ocean. He realized that his life was the law itself, and the law cannot be destroyed. He survived. He was exiled again, but the spiritual guarantee was absolute. He had walked through the shadow of discontinuity and emerged with the surety of eternity. eternity etched into his very being. This is the core of the guarantee we inherit. If the wave dedicates itself entirely to the truth of the ocean will protect the wave until its natural time. Death loses its power as an existential threat because it is merely a transition, a scheduled return, not an arbitrary termination. The practice he established, the chanting of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, is the precise mechanism for achieving this absolute conviction. It is the action of the wave declaring its unity with the ocean.
It is the technology for manifesting the courage and wisdom of the eternal. When you sit before the Gohonzon, you are not praying to a distant deity. You are facing a mirror that reflects the entirety of the universe within your own life. You are accessing the same boundless energy field that Nichiren accessed on the execution grounds. You are affirming that your current suffering, your current fear, your current struggle is temporary, a movement on the surface of the water, while the substance of your being, your inherent Buddha nature, is eternal, indestructible, and guaranteed. This is why the practice is so rigorous. We do not chant to escape reality. We chant to plunge into the deepest, most terrifying reality, the reality of impermanence, and emerge victorious, knowing that the I that experiences this impermanence is itself beyond destruction. You are building the internal fortress of the eternal law. The greatest clarity often emerges from the deepest shadows.
Nichiren was not rewarded with comfort after surviving Tatsunokuchi. He was exiled to Sado Island. Sado was a frozen graveyard, a place where people were sent to die slowly, physically and spiritually. The waves there were harsh, relentless, reflecting the hostility of the environment and the political system that had cast him out. He lived in a dilapidated hut, fighting starvation, freezing temperatures, and constant threats from those who sought to silence him permanently. But it was in that crucible, surrounded by deprivation and absolute isolation, that he solidified the architecture of his teaching. He didn't just survive, he wrote. He articulated the mechanics of the law with an intellectual vigor that defied his physical circumstances. He proved that the internal fortress he had built was not merely defensive, but generative. It was from Sado that he defined in ultimate terms the eternity of life, the relationship between the mortal wave and the infinite ocean. He taught that life is not a linear progression from birth to death, but a continuous cycling of energy, a profound continuity governed by the law. To understand this, we must look beyond the six senses and the ego. We must look into the deeper structure of consciousness. The first 5 consciousnesses are your senses. The 6th is the intellect that processes sensory data. The 7th, the manas, is the deep-seated ego, the source of attachment and illusion. It is the part of the wave that mistakenly believes it is separate, isolated, and therefore perishable. The 8th, the alaya vijnana, is the storehouse consciousness. This is the vast personal reservoir of karma, memory, actions, and potential, accumulated across countless lifetimes. It is the deep water that carries the blueprint of the wave. But the 9th, the amala vijnana, that is the pure, fundamental consciousness. That is the ocean itself. That is the essence of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
It is the realm of absolute purity, the eternal bedrock that supports all existence.
When the wave crashes, when the physical form dissolves at death, the energy, the memory, the potential, the entire karmic blueprint returns to the 8th and 9th consciousnesses. It never ceases to exist. It merely shifts state from the visible, physical manifestation, the wave, to the invisible, latent energy, the deep ocean. The fear of death is the fear of discontinuity. Wisdom, Nichiren revealed, eliminates that fear by showing that discontinuity is impossible. Life is guaranteed because the fundamental energy of the universe cannot be destroyed. But this guarantee is not an excuse for passivity. If you are an eternal entity, what are you doing with this specific, precious manifestation of the wave? This life, right now, is the battlefield where you refine the karma stored in the deep consciousness.
This moment is the only moment where you can actively transform the seeds planted in the Alela Vijnana. You are not just living a life. You are actively determining the foundational energy for the next manifestation. You are choosing the quality of the ocean you will return to, and the power and direction of the wave you will eventually become again. Your current courage, your current determination to transform suffering into value is your eternal guarantee. It is the proof that the wave is acting in full alignment with the infinite, indestructible power of the ocean. Nichiren's exile was not merely survival. It was the ultimate physical demonstration that the law of the eternal life is accessible to every single human being, right here, right now, in the midst of the most brutal suffering. He wrote, "The winter never fails to turn into spring. The guarantee is built into the rhythm of the universe. Your wave will crash, but your essence is already the spring."
We talk about the spring, but what does that look like when the winter is trying to kill you? The ultimate test of this Buddhist principle, the guarantee that life is eternal and indestructible, happened when Nichiren Daishonin faced the executioner's blade. The Tatsunokuchi persecution, September 12th, 1271. He was dragged out of Kamakura, taken to the execution grounds by the sea. The government, the established powers, the corrupted priesthood, they wanted him erased. They wanted the wave destroyed permanently, the memory silenced, the teaching extinguished. Nichiren stood there, facing the sea, reciting the Lotus Sutra. He was utterly calm because he understood the physics of the universe. He was the wave, yes, but he knew he was fundamentally the ocean. As the executioner raised the sword, the blade poised to sever the physical connection. A brilliant object, witnesses say, shot across the sky. A celestial phenomenon.
A bolt of light so powerful and terrifying that the guards were momentarily paralyzed. The executioner dropped his sword and collapsed. The attempt failed. This event, Tatsunokuchi, is not just a historical miracle. It is the moment Nichiren shed his transient identity as a mere mortal teacher and revealed his true eternal nature, the Buddha of the latter day of the law. He transcended the fear of death entirely because he proved, physically and spiritually,
that the fundamental energy of his life was beyond the reach of physical destruction. He was essentially demonstrating that you can crash this wave, but you cannot destroy the water. This non-execution was immediately followed by exile to Sado Island. Sado was intended to be a death sentence delivered slowly. Starvation, extreme cold, hostile terrain, and isolation. But for Nichiren, Sado became the ultimate laboratory. It was the deepest winter, forcing him to rely entirely on the indestructible spring of his own life.
It was on Sado, in the depths of suffering, that he forged the major treatises that define our practice today. He didn't write them as a victim waiting to die. He wrote them as the sovereign of his own life, deeply convinced of his eternal mission. He wrote, "I have realized the nature of eternity. The 3,000 worlds are my realm. This guarantee of eternal life is not some gentle philosophical comfort reserved for the afterlife. It is an experienced reality, proven under the most extreme pressure. If Nichiren could stand at the point of execution with the sword hanging over him and declare his eternity, then our daily struggles, our fears, our failures, our smaller deaths of hope are nothing more than opportunities to polish the mirror of our own eternal consciousness. Your death is guaranteed only as a transformation. Your life is guaranteed as continuity. The question is not whether you will exist eternally. You will.
The question is the quality of that eternal existence. What are you building right now that will define the next wave? The practice of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the technology that allows the wave to communicate directly and potently with the ocean. It is the direct line to the ninth consciousness, the fundamental, pure energy of the cosmos. When you chant, you are asserting that your current, limited physical form is perfectly aligned with the infinite, eternal law. You are pulling the energy of the ocean into the wave, giving it the strength to ride through any storm. This is the meaning of attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. It does not mean you stop suffering or stop dying. It means that suffering and death lose their power to define you. They become merely temporary conditions through which your eternal, fundamental power expresses itself.
The Daishonin's life was the ultimate proof of the principle that the Devil King of the Sixth Heaven, the force that seeks to destroy faith and life, cannot ultimately prevail against the enlightened mind. You are being tested daily, not by some external god, but by the inertia of your own past karma stored deep within the eighth consciousness. Your fear of failure, your self-doubt, your resignation, these are the executioners of your current life. But when you stand up, determined, and chant, you are doing exactly what Nichiren did. You are declaring that you are untouchable by the fundamental negativity of the universe. You are declaring your eternal value. This is not optimism. This is absolute conviction based on the law. We talk about conviction based on the law, but where does that conviction find its historical anchor? It finds it in the life of Nichiren Daishonin, a man who consistently chose the path of absolute truth over comfort, survival, or public approval.
When he was exiled to Sado Island, it was not merely banishment. It was a calculated, political, and spiritual attempt to silence him forever. Sado was a frozen, desolate graveyard for political enemies. The expectation was that he would freeze, starve, or be assassinated in the isolation. If Nichiren had been merely a philosopher,
a theorist of eternal life, this ordeal would have broken him. But he was the embodiment of the law. He looked at the harsh, freezing reality of Sato, and instead of seeing suffering, he saw the perfect environment to fulfill his mission. He saw the ultimate test of the wave against the ocean's infinite power. It was during this period of extreme persecution that he wrote some of his most profound treatises, documents that define the very nature of existence. He was writing from a hut in the snow, facing imminent death, yet he was articulating a cosmic reality that transcends all time and space.
How can a man facing execution feel such profound peace and certainty? Because he understood that the physical... How can a man facing execution feel such profound peace and certainty? Because he understood that the physical body, the wave, was temporary, but the life force, the cosmic law he was manifesting, was utterly indestructible. He taught that the universe and every living being are contained within a single moment of life. This is the profound concept of Ichinen Sanzen, a single life moment possessing 3,000 realms. Think about that. The entirety of the 10 worlds, from hell and hunger to the boundless joy of Buddhahood. The entire continuity of past, present, and future is contained right here, right now, in the moment you are experiencing. If the universe is contained in this moment, then eternity is not some distant future reward. Eternity is the present. The fear of death is the fear that this moment will cease to contain the universe. The fear of suffering is the delusion that your current moment is only defined by hell or hunger.
Nichiren's teaching is the radical assertion that even when you are in the deepest pit of suffering, even when you are exiled, beaten, and facing the sword, that moment still possesses the potential for ultimate enlightenment. The mud is still the origin of the lotus. This is why the practice of Daimoku is not a petition. It is an act of recognition. You are not asking for the universe to change. You are declaring that your present moment, your immediate life, is the universe itself. You are asserting the absolute interconnectedness of the wave and the ocean. When you chant, you are polishing the mirror of your life. This is one of the most famous metaphors in Nichiren Buddhism, but we must understand its depth. The mirror is your 8th consciousness, the storehouse of all your karma. The dust is the accumulated delusion, the belief that you are separate, limited, and mortal. When you polish the mirror, you are not adding anything new.
You are removing the dust to reveal what was always there, the fundamental, pure, inherent Buddhahood, the eternal law. To polish the mirror means to confront your fear of death, your fear of failure, your fear of commitment, and to replace those delusions with the unshakable light of the 9th consciousness. The Daishonin said, "Even though I and my disciples may encounter various difficulties, if we do not harbor doubts in our hearts, we will naturally attain Buddhahood." The difficulties are the external pressures, the storms that try to destroy the wave. But the doubt is the internal erosion, the self-sabotage that disconnects the wave from the ocean. Your eternal existence is not conditional upon your success, your wealth, or your health. It is conditional only
upon the quality of your belief in the law right now.
The moment you stand up and say, I am not defined by this suffering. I am defined by the law that allows me to transform this suffering. That is the moment you access the eternity that Nichiren guaranteed. He did not guarantee that you would live forever in this body. He guaranteed that the energy of your life, the fundamental rhythm of your existence, is an inseparable part of the cosmos. It cannot be terminated. It can only be transformed. Your current life is the most precious opportunity to define the trajectory of that transformation. We speak easily of transformation, but what does it look like in the face of absolute destruction? It looks like a man facing execution, declaring that the time has come to reveal the ultimate truth. It looks like a man exiled to a frozen, desolate island, writing the most profound treatises on life, death, and eternity. Nichiren Daishonin did not speak of eternity as a pleasant, abstract theory.
He lived it as a brutal, undeniable, absolute fact. His life was the ultimate demonstration of how karma is transformed and how the eternal nature of life asserts itself against all temporary physical odds. Think deeply about the persecutions he faced. Why did the established powers, the government, the competing schools of Buddhism want him dead? Because he challenged the fundamental illusion of separation. He dismantled their comfort zones. He told them, your suffering is not punishment from an external entity. It is the manifestation of the law within your own life, and you can change it now. He was the wave insisting that it was, in fact, the entire ocean, and that the ocean demanded recognition. When he was exiled to Sato Island, freezing, starving, surrounded by enemies who sought his death, he was not defeated. He was fulfilling his mission. He was proving the law under conditions designed to annihilate him.
He wrote from that crucible, I have fulfilled the purpose of my appearance in this world. What purpose was that? To prove that even at the nadir of human suffering, the life state of Buddhahood is immediately accessible. That the cycle of birth and death, the wave rising and falling, is inherently and eternally the life of the Buddha itself. His body was temporary. His life force, the energy of his conviction, was not. This is why we study his letters. They are not historical documents written centuries ago. They are survival guides written from the epicenter of chaos. They teach us that our greatest obstacles are the precise opportunities for defining our eternal trajectory. If Nichiren could maintain absolute conviction while facing the executioner's sword at Tatsunokuchi, then your daily anxieties, your fear of the future, your regrets about the past, are merely dust on the mirror waiting to be wiped clean by the power of the law.
He taught that the greatest suffering comes from the delusion that the wave is alone. The moment you realize your suffering is simply the energy of the ocean manifesting in a specific temporary form, that energy suddenly becomes fuel for enlightenment. The guarantee of eternity is anchored in this realization. Your life is the entity of the law. Death, then, is not the termination of the wave, but the absorption of its specific temporary form back into the infinite reservoir. The energy does not dissipate. It rearranges. Nichiren's struggle was the ultimate act of faith in this principle.
He refused to allow external violence or suffering to define his internal state. He refused to allow the wave to forget the ocean. He gave us the technology, the Daimoku, to ensure that the moment of transition, the moment the wave returns to the sea, is a moment of absolute peace, clarity, and victory.
You are not going into the dark. You are returning to the source of all light, fully polished and ready for the next manifestation. Your current life is the most precious chapter in your eternal journey. It is where you define the quality of the energy you will carry forward. If you leave this life having polished the mirror completely, having revealed the inherent Buddhahood, then the next manifestation, the next wave, will rise with unparalleled clarity and strength. This is the meaning of the profound statement, winter always turns to spring. The winter is the death, the suffering, the cold, the darkness of delusion. The spring is the inevitable, eternal resurgence of life, powered by the law. But the guarantee is not that spring will come one day far away. The guarantee is that the energy required for that spring is already stored within the seed of your life right now. The power of your chanting is the heat that allows the seed to sprout, even in the deepest snow.
You are asserting the eternal rhythm of the universe against the temporary illusion of stagnation. The challenge, the ultimate test of faith, is to live your life today as if you were already eternal. Because you are. The only difference between the Buddha and the common mortal is recognition. The Buddha recognizes the eternity of the wave. The common mortal sees only its temporary splash. The common mortal sees only its temporary splash. The technology Nichiren Daishonin left for us, the sound of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, is the direct action that bridges this gap between temporary splash and eternal ocean. It is the assertion of the law into the physical reality of the wave. It is simple, yet revolutionary. When you chant, you are not engaging in ritualistic prayer directed outward to a distant deity. You are engaging in an act of cosmic identity declaration. You are vibrating your life, the wave, at the frequency of the ultimate reality, the ocean.
The Daimoku is the sound of the universe manifesting its own rhythm through your mouth. It is the engine that drives the karmic shift, ensuring that the suffering, the doubt, and the fear are not wasted energy, but the necessary friction that polishes the mirror of your life. Every single time you sit down and chant, you are consciously choosing eternity over temporality. You are choosing inherent Buddhahood over acquired delusion. You are actively defining the quality of the energy that will propel your life into the next moment, the next hour, and the next 1,000 years. The true guarantee of Nichiren Buddhism is not a gentle reassurance that everything will be okay. It is a fierce, uncompromising order. You will achieve absolute victory in this lifetime, and that victory will be the foundation for your eternal journey. Because you are eternal, you have infinite time to perfect yourself. But because you are here now, in this specific form, you have zero time to waste.
This present life is the critical battleground. It is the moment where the wave is fully formed, fully conscious, and capable of making the deepest, most powerful decisions. Do not squander this precious, temporary manifestation of the law in doubt, regret, or fear of the inevitable transition. The transition we call death is merely the mechanism by which the energy of your life, the specific, unique wave you created, is purified and returned to the ocean.
If you have chanted with sincerity, if you have acted with courage, if you have lived your life dedicated to the law, then the energy you return is pristine. It means the next wave, the next manifestation will rise faster, clearer, and stronger, carrying the accumulated benefit and wisdom of this life forward. This is the mechanism of eternal self-improvement, life after life. This is the true meaning of the Bodhisattva vow. We are not victims of cycles. We are the conscious creators of them. Stop seeing death as an endpoint.
See it as a guarantee that the suffering you face today, the struggles you overcome, the victories you achieve, none of it is lost. It is all banked energy, secured by the law, ready for the next iteration of your magnificent, eternal self. Your mission, therefore, is to live with the absolute conviction of your eternity. What decision would you make today if you knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that your life force is indestructible? What fear would dissolve if you recognized that the body is just a temporary vessel, but the consciousness, the energy, the Buddhahood, that is the ocean itself? You are not fighting for a future reward. You are asserting a present reality. I give you the final instruction. Stop fearing the splash. Embrace the ocean. Sit down right now and chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with the unwavering certainty that you are the entity of the law. Prove the eternity of your life by the intensity of your action today.
This is the steel guarantee of Nichiren Daishonin. Go forth and make your current life the most victorious chapter in your eternal saga.